Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I'm going to talk about 5 of my favorite fictional worlds. Do note that they are not in any particular order. The first one I have on my list is Tower of God. Now, if you're unfamiliar, Tower of God is a manhwa webtoon. Basically, like the whole premise of like there's this tower, and that's kind of the main setting of the series that basically people live in. There's also people who live out of it. Like it plays a whole element into the story. People who are from the outside who came in, but from their own free will. It's a whole thing. But nonetheless, like basically you have this tower known as the tower, and it's basically a tower that you climb. And once you reach the top of it, basically you along the way you have to pass all these tests and stuff like that. But the moment you get to the top, you have the potential of having whatever wish you want granted, whether it's power, money, revenge, whatever the case may be. Whatever, each character has their different motivations on why they want to get to the top of the tower. I don't remember specifically if they've ever referred to how many, because it's been a while since I read it, like how many floors in total there are. They've always referenced like, oh, you get to the top and that's that. But it's like, they probably haven't. I just don't remember because I suck at retaining information. But like to me, what makes this world very interesting, I mean, besides the fact is that the entire world is inside a tower. The outside world is never really looked into. Like the main focus is the tower itself. And an interesting thing about the tower is it's not just like some like thin, small tower. Like every floor within the tower, I think it was like a translation note or a note from the author themselves, is that basically every floor of the tower is about roughly the size of the US. And even then, like you never actually get access to the entire floor. Like you only see, like obviously within the confines of the story, you see small sections. It's like, oh yeah, they went to this city aspect of this floor, or they were only in this particular area of this floor because it was for testing purposes. Because there's areas within the tower, like I said, there are people who live in the tower. So there are cities to it. So but it's just on a scale of like, hey, it's this big, and that blows my mind because I've never known like such a thing to exist within a story for it to be like on such a massive scale. And then at the same time, it's, even if you don't see all the extra stuff, I'm fine with it, but knowing that it's that vast is like fascinating. Number 2 on the list, it kind of goes all across all Final Fantasies because they all have very fascinating worlds, but in this particular case I'm talking about Final Fantasy 15. Now the reason why I like Final Fantasy 15's world, which is known as EOS, it just has like a very interesting aesthetic to it, because obviously Final Fantasies bounce around, like some are more middle-aged design, others are more futuristic / modern style, and 15 is one example of like a constant fusion of the two, because you have like enemies that you fight who are soldiers wearing more like knight armor and stuff like that, but there's also like large scale like modernized cities and stuff like that, and even like modern tech like cars. Once again, like futuristic aspects like space, airships and stuff like that, and even the car aspect is kind of futuristic with certain aspects that obviously won't go into spoilers about. There's even cell phones and stuff like that, but it still has that more medieval aspect to it that a lot of Final Fantasies have. And it's just, to me, it's always fascinating how that, just aesthetically how that looks and how it works. And I just think it's weird because I'm so not used to it. But even then, it's like 7, and I think it's something someone else pointed out. It's like a lot of people's like perception of 7 is specifically tied to Midgard. The rest of the world isn't like that. They're kind of like small towns and villages. Midgard's kind of its own thing. But you take something like 8, which has like those schools, they have gardens, the name of the schools, and they also have vehicles and stuff like that. So it's kind of set in a modern kind of futuristic type of world too. But it's just like, I think 15 does a very interesting thing and has a very interesting approach to it. Number 3 on the list is Kingdom Hearts. Now if you're not familiar with Kingdom Hearts, which I feel that's kind of crazy, very fantastic series that is known for the fact is that it is a blend of Final Fantasy meets Disney, and that's what makes this world so unique, because it's an aspect of like there are a multitude of worlds. These worlds are disconnected, obviously aspects, the main enemies of the games, the Heartlets, open, they tear open holes that basically leave these worlds open for you to kind of go to and all that stuff. But basically, more often than not, most of the games take place in Disney-centered like worlds. Like for example, like in Kingdom Hearts 2, there's the Port Royal, which is the Pirates of the Caribbean world. Obviously, you have Agrabah from Aladdin, the Pride Lands, Lion King world, like stuff like that. And it's so fascinating to me. Like for one, you see like I said, the crossover, because it's like not only do you see like your characters interact with Disney characters in general, there's also Disney characters in like other worlds. Like for example, like Pride Lands. One of the main antagonists in Kingdom Hearts 2 is Pete. Pete pops up in the Pride Lands at one point in time, so it's just like there's that boundary of characters crossing over into different worlds, and that also applies to Final Fantasy characters. You have Final Fantasy characters interacting with Disney characters. Like you have Sid from Final Fantasy VII talking to Merlin from the Sword in the Stone. I mean, just the fact is that you travel from these different worlds, obviously playing your specific character. You play Sora, who isn't a Final Fantasy character specifically, but obviously he has that design and aspect to him just because of Tetsuya Nomura being like created the character designs and stuff like that. But he rolls around with Donald and Goofy, and obviously like as you go to each subsequent Disney world, you interact and can join forces with said Disney hero associated with, like for example, Jack Skellington or Aladdin or Jack Sparrow, Peter Pan, whatever the case may be. Obviously some areas are consistent amongst the game, but there's also areas that are only specifically tied to certain specific games. So it's always interesting like what worlds and people you interact with and stuff like that, and to me that's what makes it such a fascinating, like I say world, but there's like it's more so like worlds is kind of the more proper term to use in that regard. So, and the same thing kind of applies to this next one on the list, and that is the multiverse, specifically like connected to the DC shows on the CW. Like I'm not that familiar with the multiverse within the DC comics and stuff like that, but specifically because I'm slightly become more familiar with the multiverse on The Flash, because that's where it plays out the most. Obviously it has little aspects here and there amongst the other shows, especially Supergirl, because Supergirl takes place on a different Earth compared to the other shows. Arrow, Flash, and Legends of Tomorrow all take place on Earth 1, but Supergirl takes place on Earth 38. But obviously like The Flash is introduced like, you know, the other worlds too. Like we've been introduced to Earth 2, Earth 3, and as well as Earth 19. And obviously they all have their own specific, you know, certain characters. Like the Harrison Wells character is very different depending on which like world you're coming from. And obviously you also have like the multiverse kind of playing an aspect of like, oh yeah, it's speedsters too, because you have people like Jesse Quick, who's from Earth 2, and you have Jay Garrick from Earth 3. And so to me, it's just like a fascinating thing of like, oh yeah, like, because it's like, oh, here on this, because you know, that's something that came up during season 2, was the fact is Barry and Cisco went to Earth 2 and they saw their Earth 2 counterparts. Like for Cisco, he came across a villain version of himself, and then Barry came across a version of himself that didn't have powers in Earth 2. Like he was just kind of like just a regular dude. Similar job, obviously, but just a regular dude, and obviously like certain personal aspects of his life are very different, and obviously the settings and stuff like that are very different too and everything. So like I mean obviously like technologies and designs of like each particular world in the multiverse is different. So that's what I'm kind of getting to. I mean obviously that's an aspect that I kind of want to see even more so going forward with the Flash, of seeing like, oh yeah, like all these other different worlds and what they mean and the differences that they bring about going forward. You know, like, you know, will there be any kind of like heavy crossover amongst those other worlds, because like the multiverse is as possibly infinite. And then finally on the list is the Magicians. Obviously kind of much like Kingdom Hearts as well as the Flash, there's actually like multiple worlds in this particular universe. Now, I'm familiar with the TV show. I'm not that familiar with the book, so I don't know how much of an aspect it plays in the books and whatnot. But definitely in the show, it's become a thing, because obviously you cross over, especially like season 2 on, like, I mean, specifically with season 2, there's bouncing back and forth between Earth and Fillory being this like more magical world that exists and everything. Obviously on Earth you have like access to magic and stuff like that, which makes the setting already cool anyway. But at the same time, it's like there's these multitude of worlds that are very different than your own. Obviously like in Fillory, you have people who look very similar to humans, but who are Fillorians. But even in Fillory, there's all these different people. There's witches, there are gods and stuff like that. There's even a place known as the Netherlands, which kind of acts very similarly to like the multiverse in Flash. And the fact is that the Netherlands is kind of like the centerfold of all existing worlds. So it's like the hub world to bounce between. You go to different fountains and you can get to different worlds. So it's just a very magical setting that I really appreciate. And that's something much like Flash, I'd like to see more of it going forward, because like I said, like season 2, like Because at the end of season 1, you get the fillery and stuff like that, spoilers, and season 2 focuses more so on bouncing back and forth between the stories that are happening in fillery and on Earth, especially the way season 2 ended. Without going into spoilers, it does make you wonder what does that mean for like season 3, in particular of traveling to different worlds and stuff. That kind of brings an end to my list. That's just something I just kind of want to do. I might do more in the future. I don't know, this might be a one-off thing. We'll just kind of have to see. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this video. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.